So April has been financial literacy month, and this month I was doing something very exciting with my email community. We've been learning how to budget for the different income levels. Obviously, because budgeting looks very different for someone who's a low income earner. It looks different for someone who earns say 200k and above, and that's what we were learning. I mean, statistical results actually show that more than 70% of salaried Kenyans are earning 50,000 and below. And I got amazing feedback on the discussion that we were having on email, which is why I thought it's important to also bring it on here so that I can talk to my low income earners today and show you a very practical example of how you can create an all-rounded budget if you earn 50,000 and below. Now, guys, one, if you're not already subscribed to my email list, if you're not part of the email gang, you're clearly missing out a lot. So there's gonna be a link on the description box below to join the email community. And then obviously I have to give you guys something because it's financial literacy month. So please stick to the end. I have an amazing discount for you towards the end for one of my financial literacy products. So without further ado, let's get into what brought us here. My name is Coach Susan, and I'm very happy to have you on another episode of Finance Friday. So if you earn 50,000 Kenya shillings and below, today I want to show you how you can budget for that particular amount and make your budget all rounded. But before we look at the practical example, let's just talk a little bit about some preliminary tips that are important before you see what the budget looks like. Okay, now I've already said this before, but I'm gonna repeat it again because it's so important. The first and the most important thing you need to do is to actually track your spending. I know, guys, I know you've heard me say this 1 million times before. I'm gonna say it 1 million more times because you can never ever budget well or budget practically if from the word go you don't even know how much goes where. Okay, why we are tracking our expenses is because we want to see like the flow of money. Fine, I earn 40,000, I earn 45,000. How exactly have I been spending this money? Forget how would I want to spend it, but first of all, how have you actually been spending? So that's where it all starts. Proper budgeting starts at knowing where your money is going. And I work with a couple of clients who were in this level before, some of them who are already there. And one of the things I've noticed is that when you're a low income earner and someone tells you to start tracking your expenses, you almost start feeling like, okay, this is useless. I already know. But do you really though? Do you? Try and sit down with either a notebook or an Excel sheet or a tracking app and literally list down everything, okay? From food, shopping, things like transport, transaction charges, airtime, Wi-Fi, list everything so that first of all you can have a very clear picture and a very clear overview, okay, of where your money has been going. Even if you earn 20,000, yes, start by tracking your expenses. This will actually form the foundation of you creating a budget that will work for you, okay? The second thing that you must do before you start the budget is to actually determine what your priorities are. Now, if you're a low income earner, we are all on different stages and phases of our wealth building journey. So before you even start doing the budget, what are your priorities? Are you living paycheck to paycheck and you want to stop living paycheck to paycheck? Then write that down as a priority so that as you're budgeting, you will have in mind that, okay, for me to stop living paycheck to paycheck, I have to see how on this budget I can remain within how much I'm earning. Like you can't be earning 35,000 and your budget is at 42. Obviously, you're gonna keep taking loans and you're gonna be living paycheck to paycheck. Before end month, you're already broke. Why? Because you're not living within your means. So you need to identify that as a priority. Some of us are already in a big debt issue. You have debts from here to Timbuktu. I don't even know why we say that, but you get it, right? we have so many loans. So if that's a priority, write it down. Like, it needs to show up. When you're starting to budget, you need to know what the priority is. So are you trying to stop living paycheck to paycheck? Are you trying to start your debt freedom journey? Maybe you don't have debt, but you have zero savings. Like, yes, I'm a low income earner, I'm trying to pay most of the bills, but I don't have nothing. I don't have enough left to save or to invest. List those things down as priorities. Maybe your priority is just learning how to do a budget and stick to the budget. Okay, so list down, okay, this we've said identify the expenses, how much they are, where, what is going where, and then of course now identify your priorities. Once you've done those two things, now you can actually draw up a budget to include the priorities that you said must show up on your budget. And this is something I want to actually, before we even look at the practical example, you need to do a unique budget every month, guys. One of the reasons why budgeting sometimes can look very unrealistic for low income earners is because you're thinking, I will do one budget and this is the budget that I'll be using for the rest of the year. Absolutely not, guys. There's no such thing as a blanket budget that covers the rest of the year. Okay, there's no one month that is the same as the other. If you're in business, you already know that this month you have a lot, this month you don't have much. If you all know, I mean, the expenses are different every month. Some of the expenses I had last month are not the expenses I will have this month. Maybe this is the month your children are going back to school. Maybe this month you lost a loved one and you guys are contributing towards a medical bill or a bereavement. Maybe this is the month that you have to renew your insurance, or just something that is not always coming up on a monthly basis. So one of the things I love to tell people, low income earners, to be specific, actually everyone, make sure that you specifically draw up a new budget every month, that aligns to the needs of that month. So you need to take into consideration how much income is coming in that month. Maybe this month you have a little more than you had last month, or this month you have less. Your budget needs to take into account that, and then take into account the specific unique expenses for that particular month. So if you can normalize drawing up a new budget every month that is specifically unique for that month, you will start realizing that budgeting is starting to look a bit more practical and realistic. It's not leave this thing alone, it doesn't work for me. When I was earning very little, that's one of the things that really worked well for me. Don't just do a blanket budget. What worked last month may not work this month. And so normalize that. It's a life skill, guys. Stop procrastinating and coming up with decisions as to why budgeting will not work for you. It's never gonna work if you don't make it work. Okay, so now that we've gotten that out of the way, I want us to do a practical example, okay, of how to budget for someone who earns 50,000. I want to show you all the important categories, how to actually divide your money, or rather how to redistribute your money to the important stuff. So let's get straight into the practical example. So guys, if you are earning 50,000, I want to first of all emphasize that definitely this amount of money, we are considering ourselves low income earners. It can be quite limiting. So the first thing I would do if I am earning 50,000 is to understand my spending limits, which is why this 50-30-20 budgeting rule is very important, because it helps me as a low income earner to be able to know whether I am living above my means at the time I'm actually getting this budget done or not. So that even as you start working on the budget, some of you will do this and you will realize that, okay, the issue is that I'm actually living way above my means. The reality is that you earn 50K and below, and proper budgeting dictates that you take into account your spending limits. So according to the 50-30-20 budgeting rule, 50% of your income, which is 25,000, should ideally take care of your mandatory bills and expenses. That's your bare minimums, rent, transport, internet and utilities, and so on. And then of course, if you want to save effectively, then 15 thousand, which is 30%, should go towards savings, investments, and debt repayments. Then, of course, wants and entertainment should be taken care of by 10,000. Now, that is in an ideal situation, but we don't always find ourselves in the ideal situations. So the first thing I would do is definitely come here, and of course, we have different categories, but we want to come here under mandatory bills and expenses. And this is ideally now where the issue is. I mean, I've done a typical spending budget. So you'll see some things I've highlighted in green. These are some of the things I consider mandatory. And then yellow are things that we can actually compromise on. They don't have to be that high, or they don't have to be there. So look at this person's scenario. Ideally, they have already gone way above the 25,000 that you are ideally supposed to limit your mandatory bills and expenses to. I think this is a very good example to use because most Kenyans are here. You're not ideally following the 50-30-20 budgeting rule. You're living paycheck to paycheck because you earn 50,000 and the entire amount is going to bills and expenses. So you can see we've taken things like rent, food and shopping. If you have, a child's budget, even transportation, mostly maybe you're just doing public transport, nanny, internet, etc. And then of course when you come to wants, giving, and miscellaneous, it's not very possible to do all these things. Of course we would love to enjoy our life to the fullest, but as a low income earner, remember you're limited. You have to live frugally as you work your way towards earning more. And so here we've just given this person 1,500 for an entertainment budget and another 1,500 for miscellaneous costs. Now we still have around 3,000 left, and this is ideally what you should now consider. If you do not have any loans, this is amazing because now the rest of the money can go towards, say, an emergency fund. I remember starting my emergency fund and I was doing at least 1,000 bob every month. Now you can see this is ideally what a typical budget will look like. If you can see you still have some money left, which can be dedicated towards maybe a loan repayment, 2,500 around thereabout. That's how much you have left. So the first thing that you should do as someone who earns 50,000 is to actually understand your limitations. Once you've understood your limitations, you have to now start coming here to track and see. Let's first of all see how much do your mandatory bills and expenses take. So for this person, the mandatory bills and expenses come up to 43,000. So definitely that leaves only 7,000 for saving, investing, debt repayments, and whatnot. So once you've reflected your figures this way, it is now time to start auditing where your money is going and answering these very important questions. Okay. Number one, now that I've listed down my bills and my expenses and I'm seeing the numbers, what should I keep in my budget? What should absolutely be paid for? So things like rent, food, that one you can't negotiate. So the next thing you need to figure out is, of the things you can negotiate, what is going to be reduced and what is going to be completely eliminated, just so that you can stick within your means. Even if it's not something you can do right now immediately, it's definitely something that you should work towards doing. So I hope that first part is clear. Okay. The second part of budgeting now would be auditing what your numbers are telling you and start making decisions taking into account how you should budget at that level of income. The first thing I need to highlight is definitely rent. So most financial planners recommend that rent here, let me just add this for you, that should not exceed at least 25% of your net earnings. So if you're living within your means at 50,000 income, then that is around 12,500 maximum for rent. Okay. So if you are living within your means at this income level, this is ideally how much you should not exceed for rent. But I do understand that, of course, some of us do find ourselves living in houses that are much higher than that. So even for this illustration, that's one of the reasons why we considered maybe even around 13,000 for rent. Okay. And then, of course, food and shopping, that is another area you can look at. You can look at how maybe you can shop wholesale, minimize wastage in your kitchen and how your home is being run to try and limit this budget. Of course, things like medical cover, this one you should take into account whether you have one at your workplace. So, of course, if you do have, you don't need to pay for this. So that's a zero. But if you are self-employed, it is important that you also budget for 500 going towards NHIF. And so you want to keep auditing this. So given the limits that we do have, definitely this person has exceeded the 50% that should go towards mandatory bills and expenses. And if that is your situation, what I'm just trying to say is that it's definitely a reality for most Kenyans, for a lot of Kenyans. But now that you have an idea, maybe you can sit down with your budget and see what you can do about, in this list, what are your non-negotiables. So definitely rent, this one goes without saying, but you can always play around with seeing how the transport budget can go slightly low. I remember when I was employed, I would leave very, very early because public transport was cheaper early in the morning. You could look for probably a much more affordable internet provider, maybe bring this down to 2,500. I also know providers who even do that at 2,300. Maybe you can get a cheaper subscription and just try as much as possible to free up as much money. Now, for entertainment, we have a very little allocation. Obviously, you are allowed to spend 20% in entertainment if you are doing 50% and below in mandatory bills and expenses. But if already this number has gone above 25,000, it means you have very little leeway for enjoyment. But that doesn't mean you should leave it at zero. I mean, we don't have to do all these things, okay? Maybe you could even have a given budget. I mean, let's even do another 1,000 for contributions, maybe at your workplace, etc. And the more you work on these numbers, you will realize that now here you have a summary, okay? You earn 50,000. The more you fill the figures, you'll realize that the numbers are getting added here, and you have an excess of 5,000. Now at this particular point, this 5,000, you can decide whether you will add it towards a bill that you want, or maybe increase a saving. You can decide to have some money going, say, into your SACCO if you want to start saving in a SACCO. But if at all you have loans, then the additional amount of money that you save can go towards loan repayments. Now, one thing you will realize, guys, the more you minimize your spending here, the mandatory bills and expenses. In fact, if you can limit yourself within these categories that we have, you will realize that this person who's able to stick to this rule is still able to save at least 15,000, 10,000 even if you want to, and you can still have some flexibility. The issue that most of us have is trying to see how this particular part can become a bit better in terms of our spending habits, okay? So this is a good example of how you can budget at that level of income and the spending limits that you have. Definitely it takes a bit more work. It takes a bit more practice, but one of the things that I know for sure is that if you can take into account this and understand your spending habits and try see a way you can remain with this within this limit, it's quite possible to have some money going into this category, some money going into that category, some money towards debt, and even some towards an emergency fund, for instance. So it's all about understanding your spending limits and seeing how you can remain within your means. That's the trick, guys, if you're a low income earner, budgeting within your means, okay? So I hope that practical example was insightful and that you got to see exactly how you can break down 50,000 Kenya shillings into an all-rounded budget. I know it also gave some insights on how you can actually remain within your means, okay? Those percentages are important to just help you to be able to remain within your means. Now, if you would like to get the template that we have just used, I'm going to link it down in the description box below. The template goes for 750 Kenya shillings only, but because guys, it's financial literacy month, obviously I have a discount for you guys, so please use this discount code on the screen right now to get 200 shillings off of that particular purchase. The offer will last until 31st of April, 30th, 31st, the end of April, okay? So please use the link and use the discount code to get. Now, I want to add some 3 extra tips for you, even as you prepare to start using this particular budgeting template or whichever works for you. Now, you also need to prioritize as a low income earner, as someone who's earning 50,000, to save what you can and always save first. I know we are so used to, saying I don't have enough left for saving and investing, but if you can establish the intention of saving even before you touch anything else, it's called paying yourself first. It's going to help us a lot, because if you want to stop living paycheck to paycheck, you have to start building savings, okay? And as long as you give excuses why you can't save, you will never actually save. So you may not ideally be able to save 30% or 20% according to the 50-30-20 budgeting rule. But even if you're not able to save that much, save what you can. The problem is to have zero going into savings, okay? So that you can start preparing yourself and practicing, because an emergency comes up and you have no savings, we're in trouble. If you had debt and then the emergency comes up, you dig deeper into debt. So even if you can't do the 20% or the 30%, save what you can. Even if it's 1,000 bob, 2,000 shillings, practice and make the intention. Instead of saying, okay, let me pay these bills first, and then whatever is left is what I'll save. How many times have you told yourself that story and you still didn't end up saving? Okay, so save what you can at this particular level. Obviously, as your income increases, as you get better at budgeting and cutting of unnecessary spending, definitely the experience will have already become part of your monthly money habits. You save as little as you can. Just don't let it be zero, okay? Speaking of unnecessary expenses, as you start budgeting, if you guys have seen that example, if you use it and you actually take into account everything, guys, you start realizing that you are living way above your means. And that's not supposed to scare you or to stress you out. It's supposed to inform your decision making, okay? So some of us are going to do this budget and realize that we've been living way above our means. See if you can cut any unnecessary spending. And this is very uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable thing. It's an uncomfortable conversation. Sometimes this is exactly what makes budgeting feel very restrictive for some of us. But there are times that, you just gotta do what you have to do, okay? So I remember a time I never used to make my nails. Sometimes I do even now, stay without doing my nails. I significantly reduced my budget for entertainment, and I had to communicate that with some of my friends who, loved the soft life, etc. And so it's just important to look at, of course, there are bare minimums that must absolutely be paid for. But if you're being honest with yourself and you really, really audit your finances, you might identify 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 somewhere you could save, and don't just cut down unnecessary spending and leave it at that. If you decide, okay, I'm not going to be spending this 2,000 on drinks, then ideally, I will take this 2,000 shillings and start saving it, say, in a money market fund. You've just replaced that entertainment budget with a particular decision, like, for instance, saving, or take that 2,000 to a particular debt that has been stubborn. Nature abhors a vacuum. If you just cut, and this cutting is not benefiting you elsewhere, you may start just hating budgeting and not enjoying the process. But if you actually replace that unnecessary budget line with something that means more to you, like paying debt or saving, it feels really good, because ideally it's like creating a reward system. You're just like, okay, I've been a good girl this month, so instead of spending this 2,000 on this thing, I've saved it, or I've paid off a particular debt. So that's very important. Okay, now, if you have been trying to do all these things, you're like, Susan, you sound like a broken record. I'm really trying to save. I don't have any unnecessary spending, and this is just not enough for me. Like, I don't have wastage and my budget is still not budgeting. Then you need to start looking into making additional streams of income, because you clearly do not have a spending problem, you do have an income problem, okay? So you want to start looking at avenues. If this is you, this is not everyone, but if you know for a fact that you've done the budgeting, you've cut unnecessary spending, you are trying to save as little as you can, and it's still not yet enough, you're so stretched, you need to come out of the below 50k income bracket. So look at ways you can earn more. Either try and see, I know the economy is really tough, but some of the ways you can make additional income are negotiating better pay at your workplace. I also learned that if you can prioritize job hopping, like looking for jobs and transitioning, that also improves your earning capacity over time, because definitely you're gonna move from where you are, maybe earn 60 after some years, earn 80, 100, 300. So job hopping also helps. Or you can go the side hustle way. Try see which of your hobbies, skills, talents you can monetize. I actually have a full-on video on how to identify a side hustle that can work for you and to choose one wisely. I'm also going to link the video down in the description box below in case you'd want to check out some of the tips I have for someone who wants to start a side hustle from scratch. Okay? So guys, in conclusion, what are we saying? Earning a low income doesn't mean you can't have good money habits or that you can't actually budget. Remember, we said think big, but start small and start now. So having a budget is better than nothing. Doing small savings is better than nothing. So I really hope that this was helpful and insightful for you. Let me know if you have any questions. Drop them down in the comment box below. I'll be happy to respond to them. And if you're a low income earner and this budgeting thing has already started working for you, let us know how you've been able to hack it. So guys, remember to use the discount code. Remember to get the budget tracker if you've not already gotten it. Guys, it's only 750 shillings. And I have a discount for you. You can get it at 550 if you use the discount code. So make sure to make use of it. And I hope that May and the second quarter of the year is going to be a bit better and a bit bearable for you if you're a low income earner, just because you've gotten this additional information to equip you. Remember to like this video, share it with your friends, and I'll see you on the next episode of Finance Friday. So thank you so much for joining me.